Today I'm going to show you how to install the MTEC clutch spring. This is for the Scion FRS, Subaru BRZ and Toyota 86. So obviously manual transmissions only. There's a lot of talk on forums around how light the clutch pedal is in these cars. It's very light, it's hard to feel the bite point, and therefore it's hard to get smooth gear changes. So a lot of people remove the clutch spring altogether, which gives a very heavy clutch pedal feel, or you can go with an upgraded clutch spring such as the MTEC, which sits kind of in the middle between the stock clutch spring, which is very light, and removing the clutch spring altogether. So my video is going to focus on the right-hand drive versions, but if you've got a left-hand drive Scion FRS, you're going to see how the spring fits into the clutch pedal assembly, and that'll give you some pointers on how to get that out. The difference is with the right-hand drive models, the transmission tunnel gets in the way, so it's very, very hard to get the replacement clutch spring into the clutch assembly. You'll be there for a month of Sundays trying to get it in there, and it's an exercise in frustration. With the left-hand drive models, you can actually do it with the clutch pedal assembly in place. So so this video is going to focus on right-hand drive versions, and we'll get into it. Okay, the bits you're going to need, obviously the upgraded clutch spring. This is an MTEC. I got this off eBay, on their eBay store. It arrived in Australia in about 10 days, so that's really fast. I got their gearbox spring kit a few weeks ago and installed that, and I should have just bought this at the same time. They're so good. So so that's the bit you're going to need. In terms of tools, a couple of flathead screwdrivers, some 12mm sockets. I've got an extended or deep socket there and just a stock one. Your extension bar, and your I think that's a 1/4-inch drive. Anyway, pair of pliers. Grab some lithium grease or some grease, whatever grease takes your fancy. And a bit of tape. Tape's going to be handy to put inside your socket to help hold in some of the bolts that we're going to take out. Okay, righto, we'll get into it. Okay, we'll get this seat moved back. I'm a real fussy bastard, and I'm the only one who drives this car, so when I move this seat back, I'm just going to mark it with some paper tape on the carpet and on the seat, so I know it's back in exactly the position that I had it before, because it took me a long time to get comfortable in this car, and I like where I'm seated at the moment, so that's a bit of a tip. Okay, we're inside the footwell now. This is the clutch assembly here, the whole pedal assembly. I'll just show you the bits that we're interested in here. Hopefully you can see it with the end of the screwdriver. So there's two cables that we need to disconnect. There's this one here, and then another one just behind it there. Then we need to remove a 12mm bolt, which is that one there. And there's also a little circlip just back up in there that we need to take out. And then there's a pin that circlip holds in, and that goes through on the other side. So we're going to pry that off with the flat nose screwdriver. You can see in the firewall there's a bolt, or the end of a bolt just there, and then another one on the other side. Don't know whether I can get my screwdriver around up there. I'll just get in the engine bay and I'll show you where they go, because we need to undo those from the other side, from the firewall side. They hold the clutch master cylinder in place. So we need to undo the 12mm bolts on the other side of those, so then this whole assembly should then pull out. I've just lost my light there. So anyway, I'll jump in the engine bay and I'll show you where they go. Righto, we're in the engine bay. So those two pins that I showed you on the back of that clutch pedal bracket, they come through the firewall. So there's one there and then one just over the other side down there. So we need to loosen or take those off. That's where that tape comes in handy. So put the tape in your socket. I'll show you how to do that in a sec. Pretty simple. But yeah, that'll hold that nut in your socket when you loosen it off so you don't drop it and lose it. That little rod that had the clip and the pin on it, that must come through into the clutch cylinder there somewhere. So yeah, so that stays in there. That's why we need to undo that to get that clutch pedal out. Right, we'll duck back inside the car and undo those electrical fittings on the clutch pedal assembly, and then we'll start to take that pin out as well. And once that's all done, we'll have a look at those bolts. Alright, so I've got those two clips off now. So that's that bottom one. So you can just grab a little screwdriver here. So you can just see that's the clip on the other side there that you need to push down to release that. So that's on the top side. And then on this one here, you need to press this top bit here down, and that's on the bottom side of that electrical connection. So that'll release those two cables, so we can get those out of the way. We should be right to remove the pin. Righto, I've fucked up my video a bit, but I've removed that pin, and you can see there's a little plastic retainer on that. So what I did is I got my needle nose pliers and I compressed those two wings back in line with that pin, and then got my flat-headed screwdriver on the other end and then just prized that out. So that retaining clip, I've just left that on there, so when I reassemble that, that'll just pop straight back in. And yeah, obviously you need to take that clip out to get it out, covered in grease. And then all you need to do is remove the last, or the only bolt in here that holds the clutch pedal assembly in. So that's that 12mm bolt that I showed you before. That's that jigger there. So we'll go into the engine bay now, and we'll just remove those two bolts that hold the balance of the clutch assembly in place. Okay, so we're just going to remove these two 12mm bolts. What I've done is I've just got a bit of masking tape, and I've just rolled it and then folded it inside the socket there. So when we take these nuts off, they'll still stay in the socket and you won't drop them. So I'll go ahead and do that. Righto, those two nuts are off. They were on pretty tight. So now the clutch pedal assembly should just fall out. Hopefully. We'll find out. And with a bit of wiggling around, it does. So that's it. So we'll get that on the bench and we'll replace that spring. Righto, so this is the clutch pedal assembly, and that's the spring we need to remove. So it's held in by a pin on each end with a little C-clip. So one there and one just there. So then use my needle nose pliers or a small flathead screwdriver to take those C-clips out. They're not under a lot of pressure, but yeah, be careful when you take those out. You don't want them to go flying across the shed and losing them. I was throwing on a set of nitrile gloves. There's a fair bit of grease and stuff on this thing, so It doesn't look like I'll need to grease it up at all. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get those two little clips off, and then we should be able to remove the pin on each side, and then that whole assembly there should just come out. Okay, so I've just used a very fine flat screwdriver just to pry that C-clip off. So that's one done. I'll just get in and see if I can get this other one. This one's a bit more fiddly to get at. Okay, so that's that one out there. Now we should be able to get these pins out. I'll actually tap those out. Okay, I'm just using a punch and a hammer just to knock that first pin out just there. That's that one out, and then hopefully this other one should come out fairly easily. I'll have to wiggle the clutch pedal a bit. So, yep, there we go. Just clean a bit of that, and that grease off the end of that. We should be able to tap this out. Hopefully the whole thing doesn't go flying, but right, so that's that one out, and then should be able to manoeuvre this jigger out somehow. Righto. So yeah, so that assembly there, that just pulls apart like so. So I'll grab our MTEC spring and we can install that in there. Okay, so they give you some zip ties, so you compress this spring, get the zip ties on it, and then that holds the spring closed enough so you can just maneuver the two retainers on each end so you can get it back into the clutch pedal assembly. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get that sorted. So I'm just compressing this spring in the bench vise. I'll get a couple of zip ties on it. Okay, so you should end up with the spring compressed like that, so you should be able to get, I'll actually do those up a bit tighter. So then we should be able to get that on that retainer quite easily. That aside there. Go one aside. Just cut these off and a bit easier. Okay, so that's on there now. Okay, so should be able to pop this back together and get our pins in. Pop our C-clips back in. That's one. That's two. So got those two C-clips and pins back in there. So we can now cut our zip ties off and we should be good to put this back into the car. Righto, so I've got the clutch pedal back in the car. So it's just loose there at the moment. So I've got those bolts through the firewall. What I'm going to do is just put those bolts on the firewall back in loosely, not tighten them up, and then we're going to get that this pin and this circlip back on the rod, on the actuator rod that goes through the firewall to the clutch cylinder. So it should be easy to do that while everything's loose, rather than tighten it all up and then try and maneuver that actuator rod back onto the clutch pedal assembly. So I'll get into the into the engine bay and just tighten up those, or put those bolts back on loosely so we can maneuver things around in here. Okay, so I've got the pedal in. So I've got that first bolt that we took out inside the car back in loosely, and I've got the actuator rod that comes through the firewall in the right place. So, but I haven't secured that. So I've got that all back in, and I just need to put the bolts or the nuts back on those bolts that have come through the firewall. I'm going to put a bit of blue Loctite on those so they don't go anywhere, and then we should be able to put the actuator pin back in the actuator and that little circlip, and then we can re-hook up the electrical cables, and that should be pretty much it. Okay, so those nuts are on loosely there, and back inside the car I've got that pin back in that holds the clutch pedal actuator. You can just see that through there. That was a lot easier to get in because everything's loose. All those three bolts or nuts that hold the clutch pedal assembly in. they're still loose, so it's easier to maneuver that pin back in, and the little clips back in there as well, so that's all done. So I'll go ahead and just put some Loctite on those nuts, blue Loctite, because we might need to take this apart again. Probably not, but blue will do. And then I'll hook up those two electrical cables to the clutch pedal assembly, and that should be it. Righto, so everything's buttoned up, tightened up, all the plugs are plugged back in, and just testing the clutch pedal now, and yeah, it's a lot firmer, not, you know, ridiculously hard to push in, so it's got a nice feel to it. So yeah, we'll take it out on the road and I'll post my driving impressions later on, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.